I spent 3 years building my catering business from nothing. I saved a front table for every single one of them at my official launch event. My mom chose my brother Derek's poker night instead, not one of them showed up. I smiled for every guest who walked through that door, but inside I was hollowed out in a way I had never felt before. The next morning, my mom called, and I had a choice to make. Have you ever worked hard for something and had the people closest to you not show up? Type yes or I understand in the comments. I read every single one. My name is Callie Merritt. I am 31 years old, and this is the story of the night I stopped waiting for my family to see me. I want to start at the beginning, not the dramatic part, not the part where everything falls apart. I want to start with the quiet part, the early mornings, the spreadsheets on my kitchen table, the smell of food I had been perfecting for years. Because if you do not understand what I was building, you will not understand what it meant when they did not come. I grew up in a house where food was love. My grandmother cooked every Sunday, the whole family came, the table was loud and full and warm. I learned how to make her biscuits when I was 7 years old. I learned her red sauce when I was 10. I learned that feeding people was one of the most honest things a person could do. You put time and care into something. You set it in front of someone, and for a few minutes, everything else goes quiet. I carried that with me my whole life. Through high school, through a job I did not love at an insurance company, through 2 years of saving every dollar I could. I carried it all the way to a tiny commercial kitchen I rented for $600 a month in the industrial part of town. That was where Callie's table was born. It was not glamorous at first. It was me, a set of pots I bought secondhand, and a notebook full of recipes I had been refining since I was a teenager. I started small office lunches, birthday parties for neighbors, a few weekend catering gigs through word of mouth. Every single penny I made went back into the business. I did not take a vacation for 2 years. I did not buy new clothes. I drove a car with a cracked dashboard and a passenger window that only went halfway down. And I was happy. That is the thing I need you to understand. I was genuinely, deeply happy because I was building something real, something that was mine. My family knew I was doing this. I told them constantly. My mom, Linda, would nod and say things like, "That is nice, honey, but when are you going to get a real job?" My brother Derek, who was 34 and worked in sales, would make jokes at family dinners. He would say things like, "So when do I get my free meal?" and then laugh like it was the funniest thing in the world. My dad had passed away 6 years earlier. It was just me, mom, Derek, and Derek's wife, Shauna. That was the whole unit. I showed up for all of them. That is the part that matters. When Derek got promoted 2 years ago, I made a full spread for his celebration party. I drove 40 minutes each way and stayed until midnight cleaning up. When my mom had her knee surgery, I spent 3 weekends cooking and freezing meals for her so she would have food ready during her recovery. When Shauna had her baby shower, I catered the entire thing at cost because she was family. I did not keep score. I did not ask for anything back. I just showed up because that is what you do for the people you love. But looking back now, I can see the pattern I could not see then. They were always a little vague when it came to me, always a little distracted, always a little busy when I needed something. I would call my mom excited about a new client and she would listen for about 30 seconds before steering the conversation back to Derek's latest work achievement or something she had seen on television. I would share a milestone with Derek and he would say cool and then immediately start talking about himself. I did not name it back then, I just absorbed it. I told myself they were proud of me in their own way. I told myself that actions spoke louder than words and maybe they just were not verbal people. I told myself a lot of things that kept me from seeing the truth. The truth was that I was the dependable one, the one who showed up, the one who gave, the one who could be counted on to fold back into whatever space they needed her to fill, and as long as I kept doing that, nobody had any reason to notice that I had needs of my own. But then came the launch. After 3 years of building, I had finally reached a place where Callie's table was ready to go public in a real way. I had signed a contract with a local events venue to be their exclusive catering partner. I had hired 2 part-time employees. I had a proper website, a logo, and a menu I was proud of. The official launch event was scheduled for a Thursday evening in Late-O. Tober, it was a cocktail-style gathering at the venue. I had invited local business owners, a few food writers, some potential corporate clients, and my family. I sent the invitations 6 weeks in advance. I followed up 3 weeks out. I called my mom personally 2 weeks before the event. She said, "Of course I will be there, Callie, I would not miss it." Derek texted back a thumbs up emoji when I reminded him. Shauna said it sounded lovely. I took all of that as a yes. I reserved a table right up front with their names on cards. I made sure there would be food they all loved. I thought about them when I was designing the menu. I wanted them to walk in and feel proud. I was so excited. I was more excited than I had been about anything in years. Not because I needed their approval, but because I had worked so hard, and I wanted the people I loved to be there to see it. The week of the event, I barely slept. I was at the kitchen by 5 every morning. I prepped, tasted, adjusted, prepped again. I ironed my outfit the night before and hung it on the back of my bedroom door. I confirmed the venue setup, the staff schedule, the rental equipment. I went over every detail 3 times. This was my moment, and I was ready. The day before the event, my mom called me. I picked up smiling because I assumed she was calling to confirm the time or ask what to wear. Instead, she said, Callie, I am so sorry, but I do not think I am going to be able to make it tomorrow night. I said, what? She said, Derek is having his poker night and he really wants me there. You know how he gets when he feels like I am not supporting him. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone and I could not speak for a moment. I said, Mom, this is my launch event. I have been planning this for months. She said, I know and I feel terrible, but Derek really needs this right now. He has been stressed at work. I said, what about what I need? She said, you are always so capable, Callie. You will be fine. You do not need me there the way Derek does. You will be fine. You do not need me the way Derek does. I want you to sit with those words for a second, because I have thought about them 1,000 times since that night. You will be fine. As if being capable means you do not deserve support, as if doing well on your own means people do not have to show up for you, as if strength is a reason to be left alone rather than a reason to be celebrated. I called Derek after I got off the phone with my mom. He did not answer. I texted him and said, I heard Mom is skipping my launch for your poker night. Are you coming? He texted back 20 minutes later and said, sorry sis, already had people coming over. You know how it is. Reschedule, reschedule. Like a business launch was a lunch date you could just move to next week. I did not call Shauna, I already knew. I sat on my kitchen floor that night, not dramatically. I did not fall to pieces. I just sat down because my legs felt heavy and my chest felt tight and I did not know what else to do. I looked at the outfit hanging on the door. I looked at the printed menu on the counter with the table reserved for family, and I just sat there. I thought about my grandmother and how she used to say that you show people who you are by what you show up for. I thought about all the times I had shown up. The party for Derek, the surgery meals for my mom, Shauna's baby shower, every holiday I hosted or helped with, every time I said yes when they asked and never once said no. And then I got up off the floor, I washed my face, I went to bed, and in the morning I went to my launch. I want to tell you about that night because it matters. It matters more than the betrayal. It matters more than the phone call I got the next morning, because what happened at that launch event was the first time I fully saw what I had actually built. The venue filled up not just a little, it actually filled up. 63 people came, people I had cooked for over the past 3 years, the office manager from the tech company I had done lunches for, the woman whose daughter's birthday party I had catered 18 months ago, 2 food bloggers who had heard about me through mutual contacts, the events director from a nonprofit who was looking for a catering partner for their annual gala, a local restaurant owner who wanted to talk about collaboration. They came, they ate, they told me that my food was extraordinary. The events director from the nonprofit gave me her card and said she had been looking for someone exactly like me for 2 years. One of the food bloggers took photos of every single dish and said she was going to feature me on her page that weekend. I stood at the front of that room and I smiled and I talked and I thanked people and I was completely present. Nobody in that room knew that my family table was empty. Nobody knew that I had cried quietly in my car for 10 minutes before walking through the door. Nobody saw anything except a woman who had built something real and was sharing it with the world. But I knew, I felt it the whole night, a hollow space where pride should have been full. I kept glancing at that empty table. 3 name cards, Mom, Derek, Shauna, sitting there under the warm lights while strangers celebrated what my family could not be bothered to show up for. I packed up the name cards at the end of the night. I put them in my bag. I did not throw them away. I do not know why. Maybe I just needed to hold on to the proof of what happened. Maybe I needed to know it was real and not something I had imagined. I drove home alone, I unloaded my car, I sat at my kitchen table in the quiet and I stared at nothing for a long time. And then my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. It said, how did it go? Hope it was wonderful. I put the phone face down on the table. I did not answer. I went to bed. The next morning she called. I let it ring. She called again. I let it ring again. On the third call, I picked up. She said, Callie, I have been trying to reach you. I said, I know. She said, how was the launch? And I said, it went well. She said, I am so glad. I said, the table I saved for you was empty all night. She went quiet. Then she said, I already told you I was sorry. I said, yes, you did. And then I said, Mom, I have to go. I have work to do. She said, wait, I actually need to talk to you about something. Derek is having some trouble with a client, and he needs help putting together a catering order for a work event. He was wondering if you could do it at a discount since you are family. I want you to really hear that. The morning after she skipped my launch, the morning after she chose his poker night over the biggest professional moment of my life, she called not to apologize, not to make it right. She called to ask me for a favor for Derek. I said I will think about it. She said it is kind of urgent, they need it by end of the week. I said I will think about it and I hung up. That was the moment, not the night before, not the empty table, this moment, this phone call. This was the moment I understood something I had been refusing to understand for years. I was not someone they celebrated, I was someone they used, not maliciously, not with any great plan behind it. But the pattern was real and it had been real for a long time. I was the dependable one, the capable one, the one who showed up. And in their minds, that meant I did not need things. It meant I was always available. It meant that my needs came after everyone else's because I was just so good at handling things. They were not bad people, I want to be clear about that. My mom loves me in the way she knows how to love. Derek is not cruel, he is just used to being centered. And in a family where one person is always the strong one slowly becomes invisible, not because anyone decided to make them invisible, but because invisible was just easier for everyone else. And I had let it happen, that was the part I had to sit with. I had let it happen because I kept hoping that if I just kept showing up, they would eventually see me. They would eventually match my effort. They would eventually look at me the way strangers in that room looked at me the night before, with genuine recognition, with real pride. But it does not work that way. You cannot earn your way into being seen by people who have decided not to look. After that call, I made a quiet decision. I did not announce it. I did not write a speech. I did not call my mom back to explain it. I just decided in the privacy of my own kitchen that things were going to be different now. I was not going to be angry. I was not going to be dramatic. I was not going to cut anyone off with a big declaration. I was simply going to stop making myself so available. I was going to stop anticipating their needs before they even asked. I was going to stop volunteering my time, my food, my energy, my labor for people who could not be bothered to drive across town for one evening. I was going to get quiet, and I was going to keep building. The first week after the launch, three things happened that would normally have pulled me back into the old pattern. My mom called twice, and I let both go to voicemail. Derek texted asking about the catering order, and I replied 3 days later saying I was fully booked through the end of the month, which was true. And Shauna sent a message asking if I could make a tray of lasagna for a family get-together the following weekend. I said, I am not available that weekend. I hope you all have a great time. None of those things were dramatic, none of them were rude, they were just boundaries. But for me, they were enormous. Because saying no to my family, even gently, even politely, was something I had almost never done before. I had always found a way to say yes. I had always rearranged my schedule, my energy, my plans to make space for whatever they needed. Not this time. And you know what happened? Nothing. They did not notice right away. They went to the get-together without me. Derek found a different caterer for his work event. My mom kept calling every few days and leaving cheery voicemails about nothing in particular. The world kept spinning, and I kept working. 2 weeks after the launch, the food blogger published her feature. It was titled The Best Kept Catering Secret in the City. She wrote about the food in a way that made me cry a little when I read it. She said my biscuits tasted like someone had put love into every layer. She said the smoked salmon was the best she had eaten outside of a high-end restaurant. She included 5 photos and linked to my website and my booking page. My inbox went from quiet to full in about 48 hours. I booked 4 new events in the first week after that article. The nonprofit events director followed through, and we signed a contract for their annual gala, which was their biggest fundraising event of the year, serving over 200 guests. A law firm reached out about becoming their regular lunch provider for client meetings. A woman planning her daughter's wedding called and said she had seen the feature and wanted to discuss having me handle the full reception. I hired a third part-time employee. I upgraded my kitchen equipment. I started going to bed later and waking up earlier and somehow feeling more rested than I had in years because the exhaustion was the right kind. It was the exhaustion of building something real. I was also doing something else in those weeks, something quieter and more personal. I was learning to be alone without being lonely. I was learning that silence from my family did not have to mean silence in my life. I started calling my college friend Renata more often. She lived 2 states away, but we talked for an hour every Sunday, and she always wanted to hear about the business. She celebrated every small win with me. She asked follow-up questions. She remembered things I had told her weeks ago and checked back in. I started attending a monthly small business networking event I had been meaning to join for over a year. I met a woman there named Gloria who ran a flower design studio. We became fast friends over a shared obsession with detail and a mutual appreciation for working at 5 in the morning when everything was quiet. Gloria started recommending me to her wedding clients, and I started recommending her to mine. My world was getting fuller, not louder, fuller. But what I did not know then was that the fullness was about to be tested. Because before the breakthrough comes the moment where you have to decide if you really mean the change you made, or if it was just a temporary reaction to pain. About 6 weeks after the launch, my mom called on a Sunday afternoon. I picked up this time. She sounded different, a little softer. She asked how I was. I said I was well. She asked about the business, and I told her it was growing. She said, "That is wonderful, Callie, I mean that." And I said, "Thank you." And then she said, "I need to tell you something. I want to say that I am sorry I missed your launch. I think about it sometimes. I know it was important to you." I did not rush to say it was okay. I did not say, "Oh, don't worry about it," because it was not okay. And I did not want to lie to her just to make the moment more comfortable for her, so I said it was important, and it would have meant a lot to have you there. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I did not understand at the time how big it was." She paused. I let the silence sit. She said, "Derek can just be very demanding sometimes." I said, "Yes, I know." And she said, "But that is not your problem to carry." That was the most honest thing my mother had said to me in years. I felt something shift a little, not a full repair, not a healing of everything, but a crack in the wall, a small, real acknowledgement. I said, Mom, I love you, but I have had to adjust some things. I am not as available as I used to be, not because I am punishing you, but because I have a business to run and I need my energy for that right now. She said, I understand. And she said it in a way that told me she did not fully understand, but she was trying. That was enough for now, it was a start. Meanwhile, Derek had no idea any of this was happening. He still texted me occasionally with things like, hey sis, long time no talk, wanna grab lunch sometime? I replied when I felt like it, which was not always right away. He did not seem to notice the change in my response time. He was busy with his own life, that was fine. I was busy with mine. The nonprofit gala was in March, 4 months away when we signed the contract. I spent those 4 months preparing in a way I had never prepared for anything before. I researched the guest list. I designed a menu that was both elegant and efficient to serve at scale. I coordinated with the venue's kit. Hen staff, I did 2 full test runs of every dish. I hired a fourth part-time employee specifically for the event and trained her personally. The gala had been their biggest annual event for 12 years. They had used a series of different caterers over the years, never finding one they truly loved. The events director, whose name was Patricia, had been looking for a permanent catering partner. She said to me during one of our planning calls, Callie, if you nail this event, I am prepared to offer you a 3-year exclusive contract for all of our events. I sat with the phone pressed to my ear and I thought, this is it. This is what 3 years of 5 a.m. mornings looks like. I did not tell my family about the gala, not because I was hiding it, but because I had learned that sharing my excitement with them before an event was a way of setting myself up to be disappointed. If they knew about it, they might say something vague and supportive that would make me hope they would show up, and then I would be back in that cycle again, so I kept it close. I told Renata, I told Gloria, I told my employees, and I let those people be excited with me. But what I did not know was that the news was already starting to travel. That food blogger's article had been shared widely. A local business magazine had picked up the story and run a small feature in their monthly roundup. The nonprofit gala was going to put me in front of over 200 people, including city council members, local executives, and several well-known philanthropists. My name was in places it had never been before. At some point, Derek found the magazine feature. I know this because he texted me a screenshot of it with 3 fire emojis and the message, look at my sister killing it. I replied with a thank you and nothing else. He did not call. He did not ask how I was doing or what was new or whether I wanted to grab that lunch he had mentioned 3 times without ever following through. He sent 3 fire emojis and moved on with his day. I thought that is who he is, and that is okay. I do not need him to be different. I just need to see him clearly. The gala was on a Friday evening in mid-March. I arrived at the venue 4 hours early with my team. We set up with military precision. Every dish was timed to come out in a specific sequence. Every station was staffed. Every detail was considered. When the guests began arriving at 6, everything was in place. I worked that room all night, not in a showy way, in a quiet, constant, professional way. I circled the floor, checked in with my team, tasted things, adjusted seasoning, replaced trays before they were empty. Patricia found me at about 8 o'clock and grabbed my arm and said, Callie, I have had 3 board members tell me tonight that this is the best catering they have seen at this event in its entire history. I am so glad you are here. At the end of the night, after the guests had gone and my team was breaking down the stations, I stood in the center of that empty ballroom and I breathed, just breathed. The tables were scattered with event programs and empty glasses and the small debris of a successful party. The lights were low, my feet hurt. My hands smelled like rosemary and olive oil. And I felt something I had never felt quite so clearly before. I felt complete, not because of what someone else said about me, not because I had proven anything to anyone, but because I had done what I set out to do. I had built something real and it had delivered. I called Renata on my drive home. She answered on the second ring. I told her how it went. She screamed, an actual scream of joy. She said, I always knew you were going to do this, Callie, always. I laughed and cried a little at the same time, because that was what I had been missing without knowing it. Someone who always knew, someone who never needed to be convinced. Gloria texted me the next morning. She said, I heard the gala was extraordinary. I said, I think it went well. She said, that is what I heard too, from 3 different people independently. Patricia called me the following Monday and offered me the 3-year contract. I signed it that same week. Now here is where the story takes the turn I promised you in the first 30 seconds. About 2 weeks after the gala, I started getting calls from people I had not heard from in a while. An extended family member who had my number from years ago, a cousin who I barely spoke to, and then Derek. Derek called on a Tuesday afternoon. I saw his name on my phone and I felt the old pull, that familiar feeling of wanting to answer immediately, of wanting to be close with him, of wanting things to be easy between us. But I also felt something new underneath it, a calm kind of knowing. I let it ring to voicemail. He did not leave a message, he texted instead. He said, hey sis, I heard about the nonprofit contract, that is huge. Mom showed me the article in the business magazine. I am really proud of you. Can we talk? I have something I want to ask you. I read it twice. I am really proud of you. Can we talk? I have something I want to ask you. Not I wanted to celebrate with you. Not can we catch up? I have something I want to ask you in the same sentence as the pride. The pride was the opening, the ask was the point. I waited 2 days, then I called him back. He answered right away. He said, Callie, great to hear your voice. I said, you too, Derek. He said, I have to say, I am blown away by what you have been doing. That gala, the magazine feature, the contracts you're landing. He said, I always knew you had it in you. I always said that about you. I let that sit for a moment. He always said that about me. I could not remember a single time he had said that to me, but I stayed quiet and let him continue. He said, listen, the reason I wanted to talk is that my company is hosting a client appreciation event in April. It is a pretty big deal. About 80 guests, some major accounts, and my boss has been asking about catering. I told him my sister runs the best catering company in the city, and I was wondering if you could do it. I would want you to really show out, really impress them. He paused and then said, and obviously we would work something out on price since you're family. I sat with the phone in my hand and I thought about my launch event. I thought about the empty table with the name cards. I thought about his poker night. I thought about the text that said, sorry sis, reschedule. I thought about my mom calling the next morning not to apologize but to ask for a discount for Derek. And then I thought about the gala, about 200 guests and the board member compliments and Patricia's phone call and the 3-year contract. I thought about Renata screaming on the phone. I thought about the empty ballroom and the feeling of being complete. And I said, Derek, I appreciate you reaching out. I want to be honest with you. My rates are my rates. I do not do discounts for anyone anymore. It got complicated. I can send you my current package information, and if the numbers work for your company, I would love to be part of your event. If they do not work, I understand completely. He was quiet for a second, then he said, oh, I thought since we are family. I said, I know, but I am running a real business now. And I have learned that mixing family and discounts makes things harder, not easier. He said, right, yeah, no, totally fair. He said it quickly like he was covering something. Then he said, I will pass along your info to the events team. He never followed up, the events team never reached out. And I was okay with that, more than okay. Because here is what that conversation gave me. It confirmed something. It confirmed that the reach out was not about reconnecting. It was not about celebrating me. It was about accessing what I had built. When the access came at full price, the interest disappeared. And that told me everything I needed to know about the nature of the contact. My mom called a few days later. She had heard through Derek that I had turned down the discount. She said, Callie, I think you might have hurt his feelings a little. I said, Mom, I quoted him my standard rate. He runs a business too. He knows what rates are. She said, but you are family. I said, I know, and family should want to pay me fairly, not ask me to undervalue my work. She was quiet. Then she said, I never thought about it that way. I said, I know, Mom, but I have. That conversation was different from the one a few months earlier. My mom sounded less defensive, less quick to redirect. She listened more than she talked. At the end, she said, I think I have been pretty hard on you over the years without realizing it, not in a cruel way, but in the way where I just assumed you were fine and so I put my attention elsewhere. I said, I know you did not mean it badly. She said, that does not make it okay, and I said no, but it makes it human. After that call, I sat in my kitchen and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not anger, not grief, something closer to relief. Like a door I had been pressing against for years had finally, quietly opened. Not wide, not all the way, but enough to let in some light. My mom started calling more regularly after that. Not with asks, just to talk. She asked about the business in a different way, with more genuine curiosity. She started telling her friends about me in a way I could hear was real pride and not just performance. She asked if she could come see the kitchen one Saturday, and I said yes, and she came and she walked around the space with wide eyes and said, Callie, this is incredible. I did not know it was like this. And I believed her. That one relationship was beginning to repair, slowly, quietly, on new terms, terms that included her actually seeing me. Derek was different. He stayed polite when we ran into each other. At family things, but there was a distance now, and I think we both knew it had been there long before I named it. He was not a villain. He was just someone who had always been centered and did not know how to shift that. Maybe one day that would change, maybe it would not. I was no longer holding my breath. Shauna reached out a few months after the gala. Not about catering, just to check in. She said she had seen the magazine feature and wanted to say congratulations. We talked for a little while. She was warmer than I expected. She said something that stayed with me. She said, I think Derek and I have both taken you for granted a lot. I am sorry about the launch. I should have come. I said it would have meant a lot. She said, I know that now. I did not know it then. I said, I believe you. That conversation did not fix everything either, but it was real, and I valued real more than I valued smooths. Let me tell you where I am now, because this story does not end in some big dramatic moment of triumph. It ends in something quieter and more valuable than that. Callie's Table is now in its 4th year of operation. I have a team of 7. We service corporate clients, nonprofit events, weddings, and private gatherings. The 3-year contract with the nonprofit renewed early. The law firm has been a weekly client for over a year. The wedding from the original referral led to 2 more wedding bookings through word of mouth. I bought a house 8 months ago, a small craftsman with a porch and a backyard and a kitchen that is bigger than any apartment kitchen I ever lived in. I paid for it myself. My mother cried when I showed her the photos. Real tears, the kind that come from actually understanding what they mean. I still talk to my mom every week. Our relationship is better than it has ever been, which is strange and wonderful and a little bittersweet because it took so much to get here, but it is real now. She sees me now, and that matters. I still have limited contact with Derek, not with anger, not with punishment, just with clarity. I know what our relationship is, and I do not ask it to be more than it is. We are siblings. We love each other in the way people do when they grew up in the same house. But we are not close, and I have stopped pretending that we are. I stopped pretending, that might be the most important sentence in this whole story. I stopped pretending that everything was fine when it was not. I stopped performing gratitude for people who were not showing up. I stopped making myself small so other people could feel big. And I stopped waiting for a permission that was never coming. Here is what I want you to hear before I close this story, and I want you to really hear it, not just let it pass over you. Your strength is not a reason to be left alone. Your capability is not a sign that you do not need support. The fact that you can handle things on your own does not mean you should always have to. The people who love you should show up before you succeed. That is how you know it is love and not access. Real love does not need you to reach the top before it pays attention. Real love shows up in the kitchen at 6 in the morning. It shows up at the launch event even if it is not a big deal to them. It shows up because it matters to you and you matter to them. I am not telling you to cut everyone off. I am not telling you that your family is beyond repair or that people cannot grow. They can, my mom did, slowly, imperfectly, but really, that is worth something. What I am telling you is this. The terms are yours to set. You get to decide what access looks like. You get to decide what respect means in your relationships. You get to decide how much of yourself you give and to whom. And nobody, not a parent, not a sibling, not anyone, gets to name your value for you. Nobody gets to tell you that because you are strong, you do not deserve to be held. Nobody gets to skip your best moments and then show up expecting full access after the fact. There is a version of this story where I called my mom the morning after the launch and told her exactly how I felt. I said everything, I let it all out. I made her understand every single thing she had done, and then I felt empty because she still did not fully get it. And we were stuck in the same argument for weeks and nothing changed because people do not change when they are being argued at. They change when they see the consequence. The consequence was not a punishment I designed. It was just me becoming unavailable. Me moving forward, me building something that got so good, so real, so visible that the absence became undeniable, not because I wanted to prove a point, but because I genuinely stopped waiting for permission to be great. That is the whole secret. Stop waiting, stop explaining, stop justifying your dreams to people who have not done the work to understand them. Just build so consistently, so quietly, so completely, At the proof is everywhere, and then let the people in your life decide what they want to do with that proof. Some of them will rise, some of them will not, and both of those outcomes are okay because your peace does not depend on their decision. I want to say one last thing before I close, and this one is for anyone who is in the middle of the story right now, not the beginning, not the end, the messy middle, the part where you have made the quiet decision but nothing has changed yet, the part where your family still does not see it, the part where the outside world has not validated you yet, the part where you are just in your kitchen at 6 in the morning doing the work, hoping it adds up to something. Keep going. I know it is lonely sometimes. I know the silence from the people you love most can feel louder than any noise. I know that doing the right thing for yourself does not always feel heroic in the moment. Sometimes it just feels like a long, quiet Tuesday where nothing seems to be happening. But something is happening, you are happening. Every decision you make to show up for yourself, every boundary you hold, every time you say, this is my work and it deserves to be valued, every morning you get up and do the thing even when nobody is watching, you're building something that no one can take from you. Your worth was never up for a vote. I know that sounds like a nice thing people say, but I mean it in the most literal way. Nobody gets to decide what you are worth, not your brother, not your mother, not the person who skipped your launch for something that did not even matter, not anyone who showed up after the success hoping to benefit from what they refused to support. Only you get to decide that. And when you stop handing that decision to other people, when you stop waiting for them to finally see it and you just start living it, everything changes. Not all at once, slowly, but really. And that kind of change, the quiet kind, the kind you built yourself, is the kind that lasts. So if you are in that kitchen right now, if you are at that table at midnight, if you are the person who always shows up, who always gives, who always makes space for everyone else while quietly hoping someone will make space for you, I want you to know something. I see you, this community sees you, and the work you are doing matters whether or not anyone in your family has figured that out yet. Keep your standards, keep your peace, keep building. And when they come back, and they will come back, you will be ready, not with anger, not with a speech, just with clarity, just with the quiet knowledge of who you are and what you have built and what it costs to be in your life. Respect before access, that is the whole lesson, not a wall, not a punishment, just a standard, a real one that you hold for everyone, including the people you love. Until next time, protect your peace and remember your worth was never up for a vote. Important note, this story is a work of fiction, created for entertainment and storytelling purposes only. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental.